Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Jeff with AES, and today we're going to be making a short video all about these awesome things right here called exhaust tips. So before we get into it, I want to give you guys a little bit of an insight about what this video is going to include. We're going to talk about a little bit about these and provide a little bit of information, even though they seem fairly straightforward, some little things in here that maybe you didn't know about them. I will also be including some sound bits of before and afters of installing this, as well as talking about a little bit what it's like driving on the highway with this and some of the other things that you can expect to change or things to keep in mind along with installation tips. So first things first, let's talk about what is an exhaust tip. So an exhaust tip is usually a cosmetic item that can be added onto the end of your exhaust just to make it look a little bit better, because if you've ever seen a regular exhaust, it usually comes in a steel, like a very just basic steel, and it's usually really ugly, which is why most manufacturers, especially higher end manufacturers like Mercedes and other automobiles, will actually put on little chrome or possibly even black or titanium exhaust tips just to improve the looks of the car a little bit more, rather than some ugly discolored steel pipe sticking out of the back. My truck in particular does not come with one, and so that's why we're going to be adding one today. They're really cheap. You can find them anywhere from $10 to $40, and you can get them in all sorts of colors like I mentioned earlier. Chrome and black are some of the more common ones that you'll see, but they can also get them in titanium. It really just depends on how much money you want to spend. This one here in particular, I believe I got for about $30, just because it is a fairly good size. This one in particular has a 3-inch inlet and a 5-inch outlet. So kind of an interesting one. It comes in black, but this is the one we're going to be adding on just to add a little bit more. My truck has a sort of black theme going on with it, so this is just going to help add a little bit more to it. Nothing crazy, and just change the cosmetics a little bit. Oh, the super interesting, probably the most often asked question when it comes to exhaust tips is, will it affect my sound? And the answer is yes, or probably. So when it comes to an exhaust tip, looking at it, right, obviously it connects to the end of your exhaust, while the sound it's going to add is not going to be anywhere near as extreme or as nice as it would be if you were adding a muffler or an exhaust system. It could definitely modify the sound. So another way to think about it is the sound is the air and everything moving through the exhaust tip, and on my truck, since it's a 3-inch, so here where we have this 3-inch inlet, air is going to come out and then it's going to open up as it gets into the 5-inch part here, and it's going to bounce around inside of there as it's leaving. And so one of the things that determines the sound that's going to come out of your exhaust tip is the size. So this one, being 5 inches, has a lot more room, and therefore it has more potential to create a more bass and deeper sound. So the smaller your exhaust tip, the higher pitched the sound is, hence why when you see sort of cars like Honda Civics have a much higher, bzzz sort of sound, and trucks will have a much deeper volume when it comes to exhaust tips. So being that I have a 5.7 liter V8, I really want to get a deep bass V8 rumble, and so that's kind of what we're going for here, in addition to the aesthetics like I mentioned earlier. And I will go ahead and make sure to include videos here and show you guys what it sounds like both before I add the exhaust tip and after. So it should be super interesting. I'm really excited to see what it's going to sound like, and let's go ahead and let's jump into the install. Hey, so I'm out at my truck now getting ready to install this exhaust tip here, and I wanted to go over a few things real quick. So there's a couple different of installation methods for exhaust tips. The most common one being the type that this one is here, where you'll see it has this bolt on the back. Sometimes they have 3, sometimes they'll have 2. It just depends on the manufacturer and sort of what they specifically choose. The other method that you'll see to install exhaust tips that a lot of muffler shops and things will use is, of course, to just straight up weld them on. So a disclaimer, so these can always come loose, being that they are bolts. So of course, with me today to install this, I have thread locker. I would recommend red thread locker over blue, because blue is medium strength, red is high strength. I don't have red on me, I only have blue in my little tool bit, so that's what I'm going to be using today, but I would recommend red. The reason I'm not welding this on is because I don't know what it's going to sound like. And so instead of doing a permanent method, I would rather do something that I could take off if I hate the way it sounds or if it has a drone on the freeway. So that's one of the reasons I'm going to be testing that. But if you don't want to weld, or you don't know anybody to weld, and you want to get it welded so that way nobody can steal it, because this is of course pretty easy to take off. I don't know why anybody would steal these. They don't cost anything. They're not worth anything. But anyways, if you wanted something more secure than just this bolt, you can actually use JB Weld. So JB Weld is a little mixture compound that you can usually put together and then put on the inside. Just make sure it's a high temp version, because your exhaust does get hot. So something to keep in mind for when you're installing this type of stuff. Just don't forget about that. But again, JB Weld, it's a pretty decent solution. Wouldn't recommend using it for any high strength, you know, wouldn't you recommend it for, you know, engine parts necessarily, but it's great for like little things or sealing little gaps or even welding little things together that don't require, you know, any strength or high pressure sort of situations like that. One more thing I should have mentioned, so just on this regular nut type, usually best to have a combination wrench, or in my case I'm just going to use a ratchet just because it's easier and I can do it with one hand, so that's probably for the best. But let's go ahead and let's start the truck. Make sure that it's cool, but give you guys a before sound of what the exhaust is going to sound like. That way you get a rough idea of how the change is going to be, and then we'll see what it sounds like after it's installed. As you can see from looking here, that's pretty ugly. It's a pretty generic exhaust pipe. Sticks a bit out of the truck, which is why this guy is gonna have to go all the way up like that. So there's not gonna be too much sticking out of it, but one of the things I wanted to show you guys is I'm just gonna push this on slightly like that. And so that just covers the base of the exhaust pipe. This isn't how we're gonna install it, but I wanted to put it on like this to show you approximately what it's gonna sound like just with the tip on already. And this is going from the 3-inch to the 5-inch with nothing in between, with the full space of the tip on. So let me go start the truck. Hopefully, I won't find out till editing, but hopefully that sounded a little bit different. Should have been a little heavier, a little bit more V8 rumbly. But like I said, this is not how it's getting installed. It obviously has to go all the way up. That way it doesn't stick out, because this is sticking out about a foot right now, and that's not gonna work. So the only hard part is gonna be getting it to slide all the way up there. But that being said, we're going to go ahead and start pushing it up there, because we want it to be flush. Another thing people have done, I've seen other people do, is when you have an exhaust like this that comes all the way out, if you want more space of the exhaust sticking out, you can actually take a Sawzall and cut it off. Now, that being said, everything on my truck that's been modified so far is reversible, and so I'd like to keep it that way. So, we're just going to be physically pushing it on. Alright, so we've squeezed it on to where I want it approximately, so there's still maybe about 2 inches before the actual end of the exhaust tip. I've decided I'm not going to use this after the amount of effort and force required to throw this sucker on there, so I'm just going to go ahead and tighten it here, and then we'll go ahead and start it, see what the difference in the sound is, and then of course I'm going to drive it later on the freeway to make sure there's no droning or anything like that, see if it's something I want to keep. Now, go ahead and start this bad boy with the tip on. Hey guys, so I just finished up doing my test of just driving it around a bit to see if I could sort of hear it. So it's either good or bad news depending on what you were looking for, or the goal from the exhaust tip. You can't hear it at all in the cabin, even getting on it hard. I even rolled the window down to see if maybe it was a little bit more audible. I could not hear it at all. That could just be because my truck's fairly loud, so your experience may vary in that sense. I'm sure it's more noticeable if you have an actual exhaust, but for me, I could not hear it in the cabin or with the window down at all. So in my opinion, you really shouldn't get it if you're hoping to get it just based off of sound, but it works really good if you're hoping to use it for just aesthetic persons, for like me, like what I said earlier. It just makes more sense to cover it up, because that regular exhaust that's on there, is super ugly, and so I'm very much just over it. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. Go ahead and like that video if you liked it. Feel free, if you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the comments below. I usually respond pretty quickly, just depends on how busy I am, but I will definitely get back to you guys. And then let me know if you want me to do a future video update, just the condition of it and how it's doing, seeing if it's holding up to the heat, etc., etc. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and of course I will see you guys next time.